Hello and welcome to Abenaki Seeds Project, Cultivating Native American Food Security with Hannah Flanders and Sherry Gould at NOFA New Hampshire's 20th Annual Winter Conference. I'm Laura Andrews, NOFA New Hampshire's Program Coordinator, and I'll be hosting this session with Carl Johnson, President of NOFA New Hampshire's Board of Directors. First, please note that we're recording this session and all sessions throughout the conference. Many of them are available currently on that same workshop links page, and we'll have the rest of them up within the next week. Everyone will be muted during the workshop, so please type your questions into the chat box throughout the presentation, and we will read your questions aloud when we get to the Q&A portion of the session. NOFA New Hampshire's Winter Conference is supposed to foster an open, welcoming environment and a safe space for everyone. So please keep your questions and comments constructive in the chat. And for technical issues, please feel free to communicate publicly through the chat or message me privately. And if you would like to access closed captioning, click on the CC icon at the bottom of your Zoom screen, click the arrow next to the CC, and then click show subtitle. And if you're watching in a smaller screen, that might be under 3 dots and more, and then select the show subtitle option from there. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Hannah Flanders of Kearsarge Food Hub and Sherry Gould of Abenaki Trails Project.
Thank you, Laura. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for tuning in on a Saturday morning. I'm Hannah, by the way, Hannah Flanders of Kearsarge Food Hub, presenting alongside Sherry Gould. And I'm going to get things started this morning. Sherry, do you want to say hi?
Hello, I'll say kwai, ni domba, ndelawizi sali Gould, ndai manadnak. In Wikiak, Massasecum, Nodzia Basno da Kaad. And I just said in Abenaki, hi friends, my name is Sherry Gould and I was born in Peterborough and I live near Massasecum in a little section of Warner and I'm a professional basket maker. Looking forward to our presentation. I'll start the show.
Sounds good, Sherry. Sherry's going to share her screen and I'm going to begin by telling you just a little bit about the Kearsarge Food Hub, the organization that I'm representing, and how we got started partnering with Sherry and Daryl and the Abenaki Trails Project to support food security for our local Indigenous community. Is it working?
I'm getting there. Sorry, I thought I was all. There we go. Yay.
I don't see it yet, but I'll hold tight a second.
Oh, you guys aren't seeing it?
There's just a delay.
Yeah.
All right, wait a minute. Let me make sure I did it right. Technology. Okay, I'm on here. It's showing on my Zoom screen, but you guys aren't seeing it?
Yeah, it just says Sherry Gould has started screen sharing, but I don't see the presentation.
All right, so let me try unsharing. Can I do that? No. Oh dear.
If you want to start over, I can stop sharing your screen.
That would be lovely.
Yeah, let's just try it again.
Yeah.
All right, reset.
All right. Try again here. Us Indians are, oh, this looks a little better. Let's see how this goes. And share.
Yes.
Now do you see it?
Yes.
Yay. Okay.
Okay.
Hannah's on.
I'm on. Maybe do you want to press the little arrows in the bottom corner?
Thank you.
Perfect. Awesome. Thanks, Sherry. Okay, so I'm Hannah Flanders. I'm representing the Kearsarge Food Hub. I am a co-founder and currently assistant director of community engagement. And we were really founded about 7 years ago with a guiding vision. And we envision a resilient and connected community where everyone is empowered to access healthy food, where local farmers are supported and the land is nourished, and where all people share a common sense of place. We have a very fancy presentation for you, so I hope everyone's ready for that. So we got started in 2015. We have a nice, cute little picture of our co-founders here: Franz Hahn, Garrett Bauer, Kathleen Bigford, Pierre Hahn, myself, and Lauren Howard. And 7 years later, we've grown to a team of over 20 paid part-time and full-time staff, and a board of 8 currently. And our service area is kind of the Kearsarge and surrounding Lake Sunapee area, as you can see there. And some of you might know Sweet Beet. That is one of our kind of social enterprise arms to get people really excited about buying, eating, growing local food. And we absolutely wanted to start with a land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that our work takes place on Endakina, which is the traditional ancestral homeland of the Abenaki peoples, past and present. We acknowledge and honor with gratitude that the land and waterways and the Alnabak people who have stewarded Endakina throughout the generations. And here are some photos of our operations throughout Bradford, our farmland, the building where Sweet Beet is, some gardens that we've built, and all of which takes place on Endakina. All right, so what are we trying to do? Our mission at the Kearsarge Food Hub is to reinvigorate our community within a restorative local food system through cultivating food sovereignty, growing engaged learners, and nurturing community. And today, we're really talking about, from our perspective as the Food Hub, cultivating food sovereignty, which is our first initiative. And I'll just read this definition here to kind of set us in place. Food sovereignty is the right of peoples to healthy and culturally appropriate food produced through ecologically sound and sustainable methods, and their right to define their own food and agriculture systems. It puts the aspirations and needs of those who produce, distribute, and consume food at the heart of food systems and policies, rather than the demands of markets and corporations. And that's something we're striving to do for our entire Kearsarge community that we serve. Which means, yeah, having more control, empowering people to get involved and have their voice heard around what kind of food system we want to have here to serve all neighbors in our area. And last year, it was super fun to partner with Sherry and the Abenaki Trails Project and Warner Public Market and the Warner Historical Society and the Hopkinton Historical Society and the Henniker Historical Society to put on a virtual viewing of the film Gather, to really educate ourselves and our community around the history of Native American food sovereignty, or the lack thereof, over the troubled history of our country. And how to start thinking about how to revitalize native foodways, and kind of taking everything that was shown in this beautiful film from across the country, and how to start right here in our own community, and working toward revitalizing native foodways. And that's how we got started, partnering with Sherry and the Abenaki Trails. And Sherry was like, you know what? I have this vision. I really want to see local growers producing heritage seeds to then send back to the Abenaki people through the Abenaki Helping Abenaki Food Shelf. And Sherry's going to talk all about the project and the roots of the project and the inspiration, and what we're trying to do. And I'll just kind of fill in a little bit about how the Kearsarge Food Hub was involved. We got a list of about 33 interested growers from the Gather film screening, and sent out some communications to them saying, hey, if you want to grow Abenaki seeds to support Native American food security in our area, you can pick up the seeds at Sweet Beet, you can pick them up at Warner Public Market. And there's a sign-off sheet to make sure that everybody knows that this it's cultural property of the Abenaki people, and anything that's grown must be given back. And so here's Leon, our board chair, and Ellie, a beautiful volunteer, kind of helping to distribute the seeds. We ended up distributing to about 13 growers in our area. And we're going to hear a little bit more about how the growing season went, but it wasn't an overly abundant growing season really for this first year of the pilot project. It was more about getting the ball rolling, starting conversations, creating awareness for this in our community, and starting to build some relationships that can help carry the project forward. One of the growers, Laura, I love that she gave us this beautiful quote to kind of encapsulate her experience growing the seeds. It was an honor to be entrusted with the seeds and to participate in the project. I was so happy to turn over the beans that I was able to grow to the project, knowing that they were going to be physically and culturally nourishing. I had never grown dried beans before, and I found the harvesting very satisfying. I learned to spill the beans. Last spring, when I picked up the seeds, I wanted to start small, but I am now excited to grow more beans and incorporate squash and corn to complete the Three Sisters story. From Madeline Wright and Sherry, I learned that today's conventional varieties of corn are not as nourishing as the heritage varieties. And I'm wondering if this is true for corn and squash too. I look forward to gaining more knowledge about foodways and food sovereignty as a way to support, celebrate, and learn from the cultures of those who have always been here. So I think that's a really neat quote. It kind of encapsulates that it's food sovereignty, for food security. It's also education and it's community building. Here are some seeds grown from the Colby Sawyer College garden, and Leon's here. Leon, I'll tag you in a little bit later if that's okay to speak to your experience growing at your Main Street garden there in New London. But this is some of the harvest produced there. It's beautiful. And I believe that is the end of my bit of the presentation, and I will pass it over to Sherry. And there will be a time at the end for questions and answers, or popping them into the chat anytime if you have questions for me.
Okay, hello everyone. I'm back and I think I'm getting through the technology. So this is going to be a little challenging, but let me start by explaining that we have a family band of Abenaki who have lived here for centuries, and it's a group of related associated families that have been in Peterborough and then in Bradford, Newbury, Washington, and then settling pretty much in Hillsborough in recent times. And so out of that family band, Daryl had decided he wanted to do this Abenaki Trails project, and you'll hear from Daryl a little later. And so we decided we were going to do it. We had, after 4 tribes were given state recognition, we decided that the Nalhegan band was where we had relatives and made sense for us to ally. And so we became citizens of the Nalhegan band in 2012. And right after they were recognition was given, that's another whole long story that goes beyond the, the scope of this talk. But this is Chief Don from the Nalhegan band, and he had been running a project like this with colleges and growers and working in conjunction with NOFA Vermont for a couple of years. So we have like this excellent resource to learn from and grow with. So it's going to take me a little bit of technology work here just to get, okay, you go away a little bit. You're going to hear a little bit of NOFA Vermont while I try.
Wonderful. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Agricultural Literacy Week.
Let me try pausing that, but it's not letting me get to my timeline. Oh, when I practiced all this, it looked so good. Oh, is this good? I think now I'm on the wrong presentation.
Is a
Oh
great
dear. Oh dear. Okay, we had a little technological glitch here. And now you're watching an Indian lady try to figure out how to get back to where I'm supposed to be. Whoops. Escape. No, that didn't work. Yay. Okay, let's try this one more time. Let's close that. Oh, good. I think my problem is that my little bar for Zoom is covering the bar where I.
Sherry, if you go up a little bit, I think. the bar for the
Thank
YouTube
you.
video is.
No, that's giving me the bar.
Saw
for
you
the-
connect to it.
This, oh, there it is. Cool. No, but now you're on the.
Okay, now you got it.
Now I got it. Whoops, no, but it keeps going to, yep. 22. And we'll get as close as we can and we'll go. It's a little past it, but that's, can I come back one little bit? There, we'll go there. Okay.
Brown cherries, Montpelier squash, Morrisville sunflowers, things that course that corn that grew that our ancestors ate. So one of the
Sorry, it started a little late. Where am I here?
like the
I've got to get it 22, my poor old vision.
so it was how do we provide food for healthy food for people so they're not eating what's cheap and full of carbohydrates. How do we provide them a head of lettuce, which might be $3 in the store, where they can go to a menu out and get $1, hamburger or something, right? We wanted to try to change those to make people healthier. So, and with that, we wanted food that were indigenous to our people, like the sunchokes, artichokes, brown cherries, Montpelier squash, Morrisville sunflowers, things that course that corn that grew that our ancestors ate. So one of those things was trying to get back those ancient seeds. And those ancient seeds started with Fred Wiseman and the Seeds of Renewal Project. He started to hunt those seeds down to try to preserve them that were pure for us. And we started working with Sterling College. His goal was the preservation of the seeds. My goal was to not only preserve seeds and give them to our citizens, but to also feed our people with them. So we started working with the colleges to grow out food. Sterling College first to become a seed bank and grow out a food so we could educate about our crops with the students so they'd have a hands-on experience. Moved to Middlebury College the following year and then moved to a UVM horticultural farm and then started working with the Extension Service. A year or so ago, I started working with NOFA with 15 growers. We started out and Livy Bulger and Shane Rogers from rooted in Vermont at the time decided they would love to take on the project. So we started with 15 growers. We got about 700 pounds of squash, and and Joe was involved there too. And we grew a bunch of beans, and it was great. Then we moved into this year, which we have 40 growers, which is awesome, and thank you everybody. I think we got around 3,600 pounds of squash this year. I mean, it was a great year for squash for sure. And we had our harvest festival, on the 25th of September. We grew a bunch of corn too and beans. So that's part of the that's part of food security. The reason why we call it security and not sovereignty is because we're not in charge of our own destiny. I rely on people like yourself to help grow our food because we don't have land. If any of you decide not to do it anymore and leave, then I'm back to not having any way to grow food. So it's security because you're actually helping us and other people are joining in. So it's food security, but to have true sovereignty, we have to own our own land. We have to grow some of the food on our land. And part of that whole project of food security was to access land to gather natural foods and medicines. So I have a lot of land access to gather those nuts and berries and medicinal plants. And then the second was the land link project or the garden projects to help provide nutritious foods for our citizens. And then meat production. I have a head of 24 bison in Shoreham, and we also get beef so we can provide meat sources for them. So it's kind of a three-legged stool. And I'm relying on you guys the most, but that's the heavy part of the stool, to provide stuff to be able to give to our citizens over the winter. So they can not worry about deciding whether they're paying for medicine or heat, that they can actually eat and medicine and heat and those things. So part of this whole project is to not only grow the food, but then we have to process it, and then we have to freeze it, store it, and then every month or so, I deliver some food up to the Holland Food Shelf, which we have a food shelf in Holland, Vermont, to help up there. We have the one in Shelburne. I provide food out of my house for our citizens. We have one in Conocook, New Hampshire, to help feed our southern border, our citizens in New Hampshire, Mass, and lower Vermont. So we do all this on donations and grants. And if it wasn't for you helping us, a lot of our people would still be in food lines trying to collect government food and whatever else they can get. So it's really from the bottom of my heart. I really appreciate all of you. And we're doing great things. We got to keep it going, and we got to support it. And that's basically the difference between food security and sovereignty and what Abenaki, helping Abenaki is all about, and what we're doing for our people. We're doing tremendous things to help feed them and try to change the health disparity that we have. So yeah, that's my goal, is to continue that project and feed our people.
Yay. So you heard Chief Stevens talk about the 3 legs of the stool, and we are talking about, as he said, one of the most important ones here. So we're focusing on growing the traditional heritage seeds. And Chief Stevens talked about Fred Wiseman and the work that Dr. Wiseman's done on the Seeds of Renewal project. There is a book that he put out called 7 Sisters, and it's a little challenging to get. So I found a link where you can order a copy. And if anyone's interested, the link will be in the chat. So today we're talking about these vegetables and about these seeds that Dr. Wiseman has helped us locate. But I have one particular story about our Coos corn I'm going to be sharing soon. Here you see the cranberry beans, true cranberry beans, and the callus flint corn. So flint corn is really good for making cornmeal, hominy, various things. This particular variety, the callus corn, you can eat it as a corn on the cob. It's not a sweet corn. If you pick it early, it's really tasty. I grow it and enjoy it that way. So the Nalhegan Band of Coasac Abenaki, as you've been told, do provide the seeds. And we are producing this year, which we did not have last year, a really great growing guide. We'll talk a little more about that later, but I wanted to talk about this Coos corn. So I want to say it was about 2009, a woman by the name of Sarah Callie gave these kernels of corn or ears of corn with dried seeds on them to Chief Nancy Millette of the Coasac Traditional Band. And that band is centered in Newbury, Vermont and Haverhill, New Hampshire. Excuse me. And it includes an incredible farmer, my friend Peggy Fullerton, who's growing the corn. But Sarah said, I was given this corn and it's old Abenaki corn, and I think it needs to go back to the Abenaki. So it was like really widely published, publicized, and people had reactions like in any time or culture, right? Different reactions. Some were really excited, some were like doubtful, there were all kinds of different reactions. So I watched that with interest. I'm a genealogist. I'm the tribal genealogist for our tribe. There came a point where, so I'm assuming this is a whole Vermont thing. Sarah Callie lived in Vermont, and I heard, or I read in a story published about it after the fact, that Carol Green had given the corn to Sarah Callie, and it's a man. And I'm like, okay, we know Carol Green in Deering, New Hampshire. How many men are there in the region named Carol Green? So I got busy researching, and no, it was Carol Green in Deering, New Hampshire, the one and only, and his son that have that name. So I did some research on his ancestry, And lo and behold, his grandmother or great-grandmother, I forget which now, was a Bailey. And she traced back to General Bailey, who was a commander in the Revolutionary War, and he had a unit of Abenaki warriors under him. So there was a total logical, makes sense path that he would have the corn, and that the Bailey family had preserved it for quite a while. And then it came to the Green family through this woman who married a Green, and that Carroll became the keeper of the corn for his generation. And so he was growing it in Deering, New Hampshire. And then it was just this year I learned that, oh, Sarah Callie lived in Deering, and that's how she got the corn from Carroll. So it's just this wonderful, wonderful story of how Abenaki people have shared with their neighbors, and which is kind of what we're doing here in this project. And it serves us well because sometimes the corn comes back. In these years, you'll see some really big yellow plump ones. We suspect there might have been some cross-pollination going on here, but we have some pure cause corn cobs to share seeds with people. So that's my little quick story. But there's lots of great stories about the origins of the seeds, where they came from. And you'll learn about those in the growing guide, and then we'll talk a little more about that. So this is Gerald Peasley, who is whose dream the whole Abenaki Trails project was, and then he's going to tell you where he went with it for this project.
My name's Daryl Peasley. I am co-founder of the Abenaki Trails project with Jerry Gould, and we are members of the Nulhegan Band of the Kawasaki Abenaki Nation. The food pantry deal all started off with our chief asking if anyone had freezer space. And like a fool, I raised my hand and said, yes, I do. So from there, we got the idea that we needed to do more. And right now in Vermont, our chief and the Abenaki Helping Abenaki board are partnering with different colleges, different growers to help supply food for the band, for other Abenaki. And there's a food shelf in Holland that the band runs, and they service the whole community. And that's really, that's part of my goal, at least. I manage the food pantry only because it's run out of my house. So Sherry thought it would be a good idea if we started a heritage seed program, was supplying growers in the area with our heritage seeds, and we would get the produce that was produced from these seeds. And then the Kearsarge Food Hub partnered with us, and you partnered us with Colby Sawyer College. And Leon, very nice gentleman, was constantly dropping produce off. And sometimes he dropped off more produce than I had room to store. So, and then we started a cider project. Just, I don't know how it really started. It was kind of weird because I was looking at cider presses one day, and then my cousin, Bill Gould, Sherry's husband, sent me a message and said, hey, how about making some cider? So that was kind of like creator telling us that this is a project we needed to do. So we put out a message, anyone have any extra apples they have, because we don't have an apple orchard. And once again, Anna comes to the rescue and says, oh, we have a few boxes of apples that we would love to donate to you. So I showed up on a Saturday, nice rainy Saturday, and awesome young gentleman by the name of Garrett said, yeah, I'll bring them right out to you. So I backed my Suburban up to the door, and he comes up with just a rolling shelf full of apples. So, and then you put us in touch with Colby Sawyer College again, because they had some apple trees on their campus. We show up, and I bring back another Suburban full of apples. Some of their students were there to help us pick apples, some staff members. So our two little projects, thanks to KSR Food Hub, grew and grew. So we were able to produce 60 gallons of cider our first year. As far as the seed program, I really wasn't part of the distribution, so I'm not really sure how many people got seeds. I know at least 3 community members that got seeds out of Warner through you have dropped off. I would say start of seeds for this coming year. I know it was a horrible growing season. I replanted my garden 3 times and actually got nothing out of it. Due mainly to the rain, but also I have a friendly little woodchuck living in the area, who my wife thinks is very cute. Leon would show up here with carrots and cucumbers and radishes, and I must say that I ate a very large majority of them while I was processing them. But our community, with a small refrigerator that we had, really benefited from their generosity and your generosity. And then through this project, we also partnered with the New Hampshire Charitable Trust Foundation. Gentleman by the name of Sandeep contacted me, and we had a Zoom meeting, and from there they offered to help us purchase a commercial refrigerator through New Hampshire Charitable Trust. We got a 49 cubic foot commercial refrigerator that takes up a lot of room on the porch. And I'm really hoping to fill it this summer. So, and Leon had told me if you had more refrigeration space, I could bring you more produce. So I'm going to hold him to that.
So that is Daryl. I have a quick funny story to share about Daryl and the apple picking. So it was Professor Bridges Hall who had made those arrangements, and she has a class, I think it's called Neighbors Helping Neighbors, but it's a project where Colby Sawyer students can do some work in the community to help community members, and they get credit. Well, Daryl, I mean, us Indians just aren't that good with technology. So Daryl quickly read that. He thought he was looking for Bridges Hall, a building, and he pulled into Colby Sawyer and he kept saying, Siri, take me to Bridges Hall. And then he discovered it was her name, and he finally found where we were picking apples. So we have a lot of fun. Here we have a picture of the 3 sisters happening. As you can see, sometimes the beans get a little robust on the corn and they pull them down, but you can actually see a corn stalk with beans wound around it and a squash plant here. So the big focus for me on this project is the health issue. So Abenaki people suffer health issues in part due to unhealthy diets. And this project is intended to connect Abenaki people with our traditional foods to increase our healthy outcomes. So that's like a bit of a challenge. When we watch the Gather movie, Hannah will remember, I mean, for some tribes talking about, there was some kind of rodent out west. We all were like, no, we don't do that. But muskrats were a big part of our traditional diet. We haven't expanded to that yet, though Daryl's done an incredible job of getting a meat leg to our program. And the third leg that Dawn talked about, which is escaping me, but at any rate, so we have all of the components. Oh, the land, Bill Gould is working, and I work a little bit with conservation groups and landowners, and we are getting the agreements to be able to gather. So those are the other 2 legs. They go beyond this, but I did want to mention that we've just had so much support. It's been incredible. And then I also wanted to make sure that I mentioned the funding support. Daryl mentioned the charitable foundation, which has been incredible. I'll talk a little more about this, but the New Hampshire Council on the Arts is supporting the work we're doing in this particular leg of the stool. And then we also got some funding from FEMA for food pantries. But getting back to this whole idea of the healthy issues. So I've always had a problem with food pantries, community food pantries. You go in and the food isn't particularly healthy. And I know Kearsarge Food Hub has been doing an incredible job in our area of trying to get those fresh organic foods to our food pantries in the summer. So my vision has been right along. We want wild rice. We want, good quality foods and organic foods, foods that are going to improve our health. Well, those foods are much more costly, which is why your average food pantries, you tend not to see as many of those foods. And then there's the whole issue of, well, I'm not as poor as other people. I want to save the food for other people. No, we want everybody to eat them. So I'm so excited to hear Daryl say that he ate a good portion of those fresh vegetables, because it's a struggle. And that's part of why we've worked to change the name to food shelf, like is used in Vermont, as opposed to food pantry, because this really is about feeding all of our people healthy food and sharing that healthy food with our partners in the community. Whoops, click on the right spot here. Okay. So the process, it's really easy. You get your seeds, you grow the food, we all enjoy to eat it. So in terms of get your seeds, you heard that Kearsarge Food Hub again is on board, and the Warner Public Market. And this year we're adding the Hopkinton Historical Society. So I'll just say briefly here, Hopkinton Historical Society has been an incredible partner to Abenaki Trails. They're our fiscal sponsor. They did a show this year called What We Learned from Abenaki Trails over the first year. It was very, very popular exhibit that is still sitting there. It's not really open at this point, but we're doing a video. We have a Jed Schwartz is going to do a video of the show for us. But so many people came to see it. New Hampshire Public Radio did a spot on it. And the New Hampshire Arts Council folks came and encouraged the Hopkinton Historical Society to make it a traveling show. So that's really exciting. But what's even more exciting is that this year, they've decided to do Abenaki foodways for their full-time exhibit. So we are just over the top, and they're watching this talk and seeing all the partners that are working on this end of it while they got funding from the New Hampshire Arts Council, and they will be producing a really nice growers guide. We're so thankful for the support, both from Hopkinton Historical, but also from the New Hampshire Arts Council. And part of that is commissioning some original artwork by one of our tribal artists, Francine Poitras Jones, who does beautiful work. We're just so excited. And that will be free, available free when it's done. So very excited to see HHS, Hopkinton Historical Society, come on board. I saw this picture and I was like, oh, this is cool. But I didn't realize, let me see if I can do it. Technology challenge. Nope, go the other way. I could zoom in and look, you see the little cranberry, true cranberry seeds here. And then the corn seeds, and then the squash seeds. So I was like, oh my gosh, that picture was better than I didn't even know I was that good.
Hey, Sherry, just popping in to say we have about 20 minutes left.
Cool. All right. So step 2 is, whoops. Oh, my apologies. Let me get back on here and talk a little less and just get your seeds. And yay, you grow it and deliver it. So delivery this year will be to Kearsarge Food Hub, and they will get it to the AHA food shelf. So once again, yay, Kearsarge Food Hub. We have a little timeline here. So the seed pickup, we're looking at early April, and the exact date is to be determined. Hannah will explain a little more about that, but it'll be the first week of April. Plant the seeds late May, early June, and then grow it June, July, August. Harvest the plants August and September, and then deliver them September. Probably throughout September. In October, there's going to be a big harvest dinner that Hopkinton Historical will be doing as part of the Abenaki Foodways project. So some of the food that gets grown will be used in that dinner that Daryl, who is an excellent chef, will be cooking up. Excuse me. So the outcomes, whoops, that was not what I meant to do. Let's come back here. The outcomes are really three: healthy food, corn, squash, and beans, the three sisters. It's cross-cultural, so the whole business of sharing with our neighbors, and the education about where our seeds came from, what the history is, how they were preserved to today, which is really pretty amazing. And then working with the colleges. So we all benefit from what the colleges learn about the seeds, teach, give their commitment, and they benefit by having that opportunity. There were a lot of other fingers from Colby Sawyer that came out of Leon first stepping up to do the seed project and the involvement with Kearsarge Hub. And then a cookbook. So that grower's guide I mentioned is going to grow through this project into a cookbook that will include information on growing, information on preserving, and then have recipes. And it will be contributed to by both our growers and Abenaki people. So it will be a cross-cultural cookbook. And take it away, Hannah.
Yes, I've seen some comments in the chat. How do we get involved? How do we grow the seeds? So there's two aspects to getting involved. One is if you're a farmer or a grower in our area, we would love for you to experiment with growing these seeds. And we have a form for you to fill out either at bit.ly/Abenaki seeds. Capitals do matter, so make sure you get those in there. Or you can go to kearsargefoodhub.org. I can actually put it in the chat. kearsargefoodhub.org/Abenaki seeds project. We're also looking for, so last year we had 13 growers, not a whole lot in yield like we talked about for a multitude of reasons, and that's okay. But we would love to grow that community this year. And also in order to make the project manageable as we grow, we're looking for a volunteer to coordinate the project. And this really starts pretty soon in terms of outreach to the growers, getting all those email lists, planning the distribution date, like Sherry said, which is sometime in early April, and coordinating at the three sites, Sweet Beet here in Bradford, Warner Public Market in Warner, and the Hopkinton Historical Society in Hopkinton. And those will be where the seeds are distributed. And so we're looking for someone to take on that coordinator position, as well as if there's interest or availability, that person could be the main contact for questions throughout the growing season. Like Sherry said, there will be a grower's guide that's provided on all the seeds. But if you have a question, that person, if you're knowledgeable or interested in gardening, could answer some. And if you need to kick it off to Sherry or somebody else for more detailed information, that's also a possibility. But it would be very supportive to Sherry and the Abenaki Trails Project, as well as the Kearsarge Food Hub, to have a volunteer coordinating this project. So you can email me at hannah@kearsargefoodhub.org or follow the link I put in the chat to our webpage to learn a little bit more about that. And I did want to kick it over to Leon. You've been mentioned many times today, rock star Leon, about your experience growing the seeds at Colby Sawyer College. Would you like to speak to that a little bit, Leon? I'll ask to unmute you. Is it working? Laura, I'm asking to unmute, but nothing's happening. Oh, it's working.
It's working. Thanks. Thanks, Hannah. And thank you very much, Sherry. This was, for us, it was a great honor to be part of this project. We did that on a really very small scale. We did produce some seeds. Our object was to use this opportunity to grow more seeds so that the seeds can grow more food. But we use it very educationally. We have a small permaculture garden on campus, and we have a larger little, more commercial area. And so what we did, and we've done that over a number of years, is we established foods that are non-traditional and more indigenous foods. So we grow sunchokes, and every year we grow some amaranth and use that to explain people the reason behind amaranth. And we grew, this last season, we grew a small little Three Sister Garden. So during the summer, students learn how to take care of these plants. Many of them had no idea the botany of corn, how does it work? And so many of them had to learn how to pollinate the corn and make sure that they are successful, and about animal pressure. And then what we do, we take this initiative into our classrooms in fall. So we had a number of classes who were involved in learning about that, but also then harvesting the seeds. We have one class that really focused on natural history and sense of place. And so they harvested the seeds, they took the seeds off the cobs. There's a wonderful chapter in Robin Wall Kimmerer's book, Braiding Sweetgrass, People of Corn. So we get them to read People of Corn and then reflect, what does it mean to be a people of corn? And write about that. So this tiny little project, Sherry really did a lot of things for us. The next step, and I'm so excited to hear that, is to close the link by actually getting to eat the food, to understand how does this become food, because nobody really knows what flint corn is, or how do we prepare okra or collards, or all those things that we neglect. So that's our little contribution, and we were really very honored to be part of that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Leon. It's so exciting to hear all of this. I'm wondering if we should, I can't see the chat well enough to know, are people asking about the foodways process? Should we ask Heather Mitchell to unmute and speak briefly on that? Or shall we go right into questions and answers? Do Heather? Okay, Heather, are you available and could you unmute? Oh, good. Hannah's on it. Oh, thank God for youth and knowledge of technology, because I don't know how to.
Well, I'm looking for Heather. There you are. Ask to unmute. Gotcha. It's hard for all of us, I feel like.
It is.
Heather.
All right. My name is Heather Mitchell, and I'm the director of the Hopkinton Historical Society. And as Sherry has mentioned, this year, our exhibit is going to be on foodways. And so we're really looking forward to looking at several different aspects of foodways, from the planting to the harvesting to the eating. So all of those good things that are involved with eating and food production. So we anticipate that the exhibit will open in the beginning of June, and then we'll have it up through the rest of the year. And so we're looking forward to putting it together. And, the sort of a big theme of it is interconnectedness. And I think you can look at sort of like the growing cycle season. You can look at the interconnectedness of people, and our connection to the land, connection to the seasons. So for us, it's a very exciting exhibit, and we look forward to distributing seeds in April.
Thank you, Heather. You guys have been great. And one of our best kept secrets is Nancy Jo Shabbat, who's too shy to be public very much, but she's with the Hopkinton Historical Society, and she's previously been with Mount Kearsarge Indian Museum, who of course are another great partner right in this region. And before that, she was with the New Hampshire Historical Society. So, and she's trained in archaeology. So Nancy Jo just brings so many gifts to the table. And Heather's skills at publicity and outreach and everything are incredible. So thank you, Heather.
Thank you.
I'm going to have Ellen unmute here. She has a question.
Did I do that correctly? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
This just does my heart such good to see this beauty happening. I've lived pretty much half of my life in New Hampshire, half in Massachusetts, with a little chunk for university in Maine. And I've been watching these projects happen with the various First Nation Indigenous people in the various states. And it's just so good. It's what needs to be happening as an antidote for everything else that's going on. So I'm just wondering, on a very practical level, I have a couple questions. One is I noticed that in the Three Sisters Gardens with the cranberry beans, it was planted in a round. And to me, that's the only way to plant that makes sense. I know for, commercial farmer, it's like rows or it's this or that. So I'd like you to comment on that. And the other thing I'd like you to comment on, if you could, Sherry or whoever, I live on what is traditional Massachusetts land. And a group here was the praying Indians of Natik and Ponkapog. And so there's different tribal groups throughout Massachusetts. And I was wondering if anybody in the Massachusetts tribal group is doing these kinds of projects, and is there any sort of within tribal, intertribal sort of sharing of this knowledge that is going on? I think because there was such an early colonial devastation in New England, that so many people are so scattered. And so where in other parts of the country, you find more connection in that. And so if you could just comment on that.
Well, thank you. That is a great question and great information. So what I'll say is, yes, to early contact means more diaspora, more just more of the things that happened historically. And we all know, I mean, the history is so replete with all the bad parts of it. So I think probably everybody knows that part. It's these good parts of connectedness that we're finding in Abenaki trails that we're trying to balance, not replace, not change, just report the full history in a more balanced way. But are you above Route 2 or below Route 2 in Massachusetts?
I'm in actually Needham, which is next to Natik, where the first.
And so that's below Route 2, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Like
Okay.
right near West Roxbury, Newton, Boston.
Okay. So we have some tribal members that live down in your area that I will connect you to. So if you got my email address, or if you're on Facebook and you go to Abenaki Trails, you can always reach us through the message button on Abenaki Trails. But if you're not, email me personally and I'll connect you with some of our tribal members in the area. And so the answer to your question from me is, I don't know for sure what's happening in the Boston area, but they will. Our tribal historian lives in Webster, Mass, which is further out west. And then we have Jill Cressy and Dan Shears, who are closer to Boston. So they'll be fully aware of what's going on. I know the Wampanoags do a lot. So I'm not aware of a group of Massachusetts that's active. Massachusetts people intermarried with Pennacook and other Abenaki people pretty extensively. So there's always this question of historical territory. What's your historical territory? And I actually had a wonderful conversation with Bruce Dutu, who's at Dartmouth, the head of the Native American Studies program up at Dartmouth. And he's a tribal member from an unrecognized tribe in Louisiana, but he's an expert in the law and the law as it pertains to Native Americans. So I was talking to him about this whole notion of regions and maps and areas and land. And he said, there's very, very, very few Native American people that are on their original historic land. So, we can look at these different maps that colonial people did of who was where. It gets mind-boggling, but to answer your question, as of a vibrant culture today, to my knowledge, we know the Nipmuc people in Western Mass are very active. We know the Wampanoag people are very active, and Abenaki people. And Abenaki traditional homeland would go down to Route 2. If you're below Route 2, I'm not going to claim any. I'm going to be very respectful and let people who live down there. So I'll connect you up with that. Was there another part of your question?
About the round.
Oh, yeah. So the Three Sisters Gardening in the book that I put in the link, that's from the Ethan Allen Center up in Vermont, and they are hosting, Dr. Wiseman has an Abenaki component to that, which is another really cool collaborative kind of thing. Ethan Allen was the man who basically took ownership of the land in Vermont. So, and he's very well celebrated, of course, in colonial history. And yet for Abenaki people, not so much. And so to have that facility embrace our Abenaki story and give space to all of this. But in that, if you go to their website, the link that I gave you to the book, there's also a way to get to pamphlets, to the Abenaki history and the pamphlets. And Dr. Wiseman did several pamphlets. One of them is on Abenaki growing, but he talks about, you know, the Three Sisters and the mounds and our history with that. And so, and then Leon probably knows more than I do about the proteins. Well, I know about companion planting that the beans provide, I think it's nitrogen that the corn needs. And yeah, thank you. And the squash provides the ground cover to help suppress the weeds. And so they work together in a growing way that I understand more. But I also know that eating it nutritionally, there's a complete protein, I think it is. Leon might be able to correct me here or help me out, but that when you eat all the three of those together, that went a long way in terms of the nutrition of Abenaki villages. So succotash, putting the corn and the beans together. Leon, how am I doing with that? Oh, Leon's muted. He can't say, so I apologize. So anyway.
Thanks, Sherry. I'm not going to pretend that I'm a nutritionist at all, but I know from reading some of the archaeological history of the Southwest, where many of our farming started by, you know, groups like the Fremont. Records indicate that they had something like 70% of their diet was corn, and the rest was made up by beans and squash. And so there's this myth that people were lots of meat eaters. We were not. We actually can survive pretty well on corn, beans, and squash. So there's historical evidence that the Three Sisters work in the ground, but they also work for us.
Right. Yeah. Thank you. And so I can also tell you that historically, our people would put fish in the mound, and you put the fish in really early. And then in terms of planting, the Abenaki guide that we're taught is that when the leaves of the oak tree are as big as a mouse's ear, you plant your corn. And then when the corn is knee high, you plant your beans. And then the squash, as soon as frost is passed, you can plant that. But you need the corn to be ahead of the beans, so you don't get that toppled over picture I posted earlier. The coas corn that I was telling about is only like 3 foot high. And so if you're using that in your Three Sisters garden, and of course, cross-pollination is a huge issue, so you would keep with one variety. But if you're doing that, you're going to want to put a tripod, or even what a lot of people do is they'll put a sunchoke or a sunflower. Of course, if you put the sunchoke in, you'll then have your whole garden taken over. Ask me how I know. But a sunflower will work really good to provide a taller, sturdier pole for your beans. But so my dad, when I was a kid, we would go sucker fishing in the spring, and he would always put the fish in the garden. But my dad was colonized enough that he planted in rows. He didn't plant in hills. But we have other Abenaki who were continuing with the hills. And so Dr. Wiseman has recorded a great deal of information about the specifications of how to do the hill planting. Great question. Thank you, Ellen. Any other questions that I can't read in the chat?
There was just one from someone who's on the other side of the state, on the eastern side. They were wondering how they could get involved, if that's possible, or if there's potential for this project to grow.
So yeah, I mean, certainly anybody can come over and get seeds from the 3 distributors we have now. We would welcome other distributions. If there's people in other areas. I mean, our goal when we started Abenaki Trails Project was we thought that other groups would just pop up and do things in other parts of the state. We add a few towns each year, but we're not going to live long enough to cover all the towns in New Hampshire, and we have a lot of interest everywhere. So, but that hasn't happened so much yet, but we're still hopeful it's going to. So if we have someone who is interested in distributing seeds in other locations, sure, get a hold of either Hannah or me, probably me, and I'll be more than happy to work something out, because our goal is to share.
Wonderful, thank you. Would either of you like to add anything else before we wrap up? No? Okay, great. Sherry and Hannah, thank you so much for your time and for sharing this wonderful project with us. We look forward to hearing updates. And thank you everyone for being here today. Our next session starts at 10:30, and that is no-till permanent raised beds and weed management with Jennifer Wilhelm. And I will pop the links in the chat here in a moment. Whoop. There we go. Please support our conference exhibitors by checking out our virtual Green Market Fair and our conference bookstore hosted by Main Street Bookends. And also mark your calendars for our upcoming programs. We have a Farm Bill listening session on February 17th at noon, Feeding the Family Organic Gardening Series, which is 6 sessions every other week from February 22nd to May 3rd. And check out our bulk order program to save on farming and gardening supplies. The order deadline is February 28th with pickup on March 19th and 20th in Andover, New Hampshire, Ware, and Rochester. And thank you again for joining us. Hope to see you later today.